Good evening. I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. As Arizona's official voter education agency, Clean Elections is proud to sponsor these debates. Our mission is to ensure that you have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions about the issues that impact your life, and head to the polls with confidence. To make sure your voice is heard, please keep these upcoming deadlines in mind. October 5th, voter registration deadline. October 7th, early voting begins, and November 3rd, General Election Day. If you're watching this debate live, we want to hear from you. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time using one of the following methods. Email debates@kc-a.com, text 480-769-9511, phone 480-937-1253. Thank you for joining us and for staying engaged in our democracy. For more resources to help you prepare for the November 3rd general election, please visit our website at azcleanelections.gov. Enjoy the debate.
Good evening and welcome to the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 3. I'm Hank Stevenson, founder of the Arizona Agenda, a daily newsletter about politics and policy here in Arizona. I've been writing about Arizona politics for almost 20 years, and I'll be your moderator tonight. Tonight, we're going to hear from candidates running for 2 state House seats and 1 state Senate seat in Legislative District 3. We'll start by talking with the House candidates, then take a short break and bring in the Senate candidates. Legislative District 3 is a mix of rural and suburban northeast Maricopa County, much of North Scottsdale and part of North Phoenix, stretching up through Fountain Hills, Anthem, New River, Cave Creek, and Carefree. This year, both of the district's elected representatives are leaving. Alexander Colladin is running for Secretary of State, while Joseph Chaplik ran for Congress. So no matter what happens in November, LD3 is getting new representation at the Capitol next year, and the people on your screen are competing for the honor to be that representative. Here's how tonight's debate will go. We'll do 90 seconds of opening statements from each of the candidates, then a few minutes getting to know these candidates as people. Then we'll dive into the core issues facing the district and the state. Then we'll ask about how they'd vote on a real ballot measure that's on the November ballot. And we'll finish with 90-second closing statements. Let's let our candidates introduce themselves. Candidates, thank you so much for being here. We'll do the quick opening statements. The order was set by random draw, and the prompt is simple. Tell voters who you are and why you're running. Cody, you're up first.
Thank you, Hank, and thank you to the Republicans in District 3 for nominating myself and George Califf through the primary. My name is Cody Rime. I was appointed to the House in March of this year to replace Representative Chaplik, who resigned to run for Congress. It was an honor to serve Legislative District 3 for that short time. Prior to that, I was running for this seat, and I still am. And because I have 4 kids that need this state to be prosperous for when they become adults, so that they can start their own businesses or work for prospering businesses. And we are currently not going down that path right now. And so it's my goal to preserve and protect the water for this state, our law enforcement, support them, and support our small businesses in this district and this state. We have a lot of small businesses, restaurants, construction businesses, which one of them I am in our district. And it's my goal to get the government out of their way, limited government, and let them decide how to run and operate their business. Let them keep more of their hard-earned money so that they can reinvest into their business or their family or their homes, and just all over reduce the size of government in our state.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody. George, you're up next.
Hi, my name is George Califf. I'm grateful to be here tonight and grateful, as Cody mentioned, to have been nominated as one of the 2 Republican nominees for State House and Legislative District 3. For folks that have followed this campaign for any amount of time, you've heard me talk a lot about my faith as a Christian that guides what I do and what I believe, and I look forward to talking about that tonight. I'm a proud husband to my wife, Brianna, and a father to our 3 sons. And that's the reason why I decided to stand up and run for office. I've spent my career as a small business owner in Arizona fighting for our values, fighting for the issues that common sense Arizonans believe in. And I felt like we've been taken off track by Governor Hobbs. And we are very grateful that we have the majorities in the House and Senate as Republicans, common sense majorities that support things like no tax on tips and cutting taxes and making life more affordable. It's a key part of what I want to work on. That support common sense, support of law enforcement and making sure our communities are safe and that our families are able to prosper. And that parents are in charge of their children when it comes to healthcare and education decisions. Of course, that we secure our water future, something that's not just important to the state of Arizona, but critically important to the Northeast Valley and so many parts of Legislative District 3. And we need to ensure that we root out this waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption that we have seen, unfortunately, in the state of Arizona. And I'm confident that alongside Cody in the state House and with our counterparts in the state Senate and with future Governor Andy Biggs on the 9th floor, that we can get the job done. And I'm proud and look forward to earning your vote. Earning the votes of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, regardless of your political background. Common sense policies are believed in by the vast majority of Arizonans, regardless of political party, and we look forward to debating those tonight and hitting the ground running the second Monday of January in our new legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick, you're up next.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you, Hank Stevenson, for moderating and the Arizona Clean Elections for hosting. I'm keeping my introduction short. As you all know, the opening of a debate is typically a sales pitch. I'm not going to do that. I'm Rick Spargo. I'm a citizen, a business owner, a husband, father of 4, and a candidate for those Arizona State House because I believe deeply in this country and the promise of the American dream. I founded it and spent the last 37 years running a successful business. I've lived in Arizona for 4 decades, and I've lived in the district for 20 years. I want to bring common sense back to and balance back to the Capitol and represent everybody in LD3. I'm running because I'm concerned about where we're headed as a district and as a state, and I'm not interested in sitting on the sidelines. It's not my style. I'm more of a jump in the booth, both feet first type of person. Too many Arizona families are probably being priced out of the American dream. Housing, healthcare, education, basic necessities that are becoming harder to afford. I'm running because families are being squeezed by rising costs. Our future water requires serious leadership, and our schools need investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And Julie, you get the last word.
Thank you. Thank you, Hank, and thank you, Clean Elections Commission, for hosting this debate. I'm Julie Gable, and I've called this district home for 25 years. This is where my husband and I raised our 2 daughters, and it's where we chose to build our lives. We both have served in multiple nonprofits. I'm proud to say I currently serve on the board of the Arizona Humane Society and the Phoenix Zoo. I've spent my career solving tough problems. I started at Accenture, and then I went on to own and lead 2 companies right here in this district, companies that employed hundreds of our neighbors. Most recently, I was CEO of a healthcare company where I saw firsthand how government decisions impact real people's lives, their health, their families, their jobs. Now I'm ready to bring that experience home. I will fight to make healthcare work better for all of us, to secure Arizona's water future, to hold big tech accountable, and to make sure that every student in Arizona has access to excellent education. I'm running as a clean elections candidate. That means I don't take any monies from PACs or corporations. So when I'm in the legislature, I will only be accountable to you, the constituents. I'm not a career politician. I'm a problem solver. I'm your neighbor. And I'm running to bring an independent, pragmatic voice to the state legislature, one that will put the people ahead of politics. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. And let's get into some questions. But first, a quick reminder, you viewers can submit a question at any time. To do that, email debates@kc-a.com. Text them into 480-769-9511 or call 480-937-1253. Okay, this next segment is about who you are, not necessarily your policy positions, but what shaped you and who you'd be if in office. Take 60 to 90 seconds each, and please no rebuttals for this round. So George, you're up first for the about you question. Take us back to the specific moment you decided to run. Where were you? What was happening around you? And what pushed you over the edge?
So I'll start with the specific moment. I love this question. My wife and I were actually on a walk. At that point, we had our new baby who was 2 weeks old. And we made the decision at that moment. We had been praying about it and contemplating it for months in advance of that. We had seen what's been happening. We obviously understood that there were going to be openings in Legislative District 3. And my wife and I, both of our backgrounds in different ways has been in education, has been in public policy. While I've never ran for office, the values and the principles that I fought for my entire career have always tugged at my heartstrings. That's why I always felt called to this line of work, and I didn't choose to do other things from an employment perspective. I just felt like there needed to be an ability to communicate common sense principles. We've heard that word said a lot of times before. To me, common sense and common sense principles means that we know what Arizonans believe in. We know what District 3 wants and the kind of representatives that they want. And there's a way to deliver that message, and there's a way that turns people off. And I am a big proponent of answering tough questions, asking tough questions, engaging with people, even on things that maybe we don't disagree, that we don't agree on. And that's really a big part of the reason why I ran. And that did also coincide very closely with the unfortunate assassination of Charlie Kirk, someone who has meant a lot, not just to myself, but to hundreds of thousands of Arizonans and people around this nation and in the world.
Okay. Julie, same question to you. Where were you? What were you doing? What put you over the edge?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit further back to give it some context, but I became CEO of a healthcare company that was providing addiction recovery services primarily to the Medicaid population. That's what I was doing last year. And we were struggling financially, as most behavioral healthcare organizations in Arizona are. More and more close every day. But when the government decided to roll out cuts to Medicaid, our entire business was focused on the Medicaid population, and we made the very difficult decision to close the organization down. So I spent fourth quarter of last year letting over 250 employees know that they would lose their job, and letting patients know that we could no longer provide this life-saving care. Now, I was really disappointed by that decision, primarily because when you underinvest in behavioral health care, we still end up paying for it in other far more costly and less effective ways. People don't just stop being sick because we stop giving them health insurance. So I was a little bit frustrated from that experience, and I decided I didn't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. The healthcare is really complicated. We need to make sure we have people representing our government who understand all sides of it.
Okay. Same question to you, Cody.
Yeah, so mine is a little bit of a long process, but it kind of began. I didn't make the decision in 2022, but the decision came a lot later. My community in Rio Verde Foothills was faced with a water crisis in 2022. And in 2023, our community was cut off from our sole water supply. During that time, I jumped into the fight with many neighbors. We worked with the Corporation Commission, with the county, and eventually with the state legislature. We got some bills passed. We've got a long-term solution. The legislature gave us a short-term solution to correct our issue. And now we have successfully secured long-term water supply for the Rio Verde Foothills area. During that time, I became a precinct committeeman, was elected to a precinct committeeman in the Republican Party for Legislative District 3. And then the precinct committeeman elected me to state committeeman in 2024, serving at the state convention for the AZGOP on behalf of the Republican Party of District 3. In June, maybe May or June of 2025 is when I made the decision to run after consulting with my family. We spent many days heavily in prayer, seeking God's wisdom and direction, because many people were coming to us, asking us to run. Friends, people I trusted in the political area in Legislative District 3 and outside of the district, asking, when I was going to make the announcement to run. And this was before Representative Colladin and Representative Chaplik had made any announcements. And it was not my intent to run against them in a primary at all. They're a great representation for District 3. And so we were just in prayer. And then Representative Colladin made his announcement that he was running for Secretary of State. And so it was a few weeks after that I announced that I was running for this office.
Okay. Rick.
Okay, so my story is I've always been involved with outreach programs and different organizations, scholarships for schools. I've done some work for homeless veterans, and I got involved with the Arizona America 250th Committee through an organization because my family traces its roots back to the Mayflower. I actually had 5 ancestors who fought in the American Revolution. And while I was doing that, it suddenly dawned on me that outside of putting on events, I needed to get more involved. Now, that history means something to me, but patriotism isn't about your ancestry. It's about what you're going to do today. So it means protecting our republic, respecting our Constitution, serving our community, and making sure the next generation inherits a country that was worthy of the sacrifices that were made.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. Name a current legislator serving at the Capitol who is not a member of your own party, who you'd vote for if you lived in their district, and tell us a little bit about why. And Julie, who comes to mind?
I would say Senator Shauna Bullock. The reason I would say that is because I'm sure there's plenty of things that we don't agree on. But I sit on the board of the Arizona Humane Society, and she was instrumental in championing a bill through the legislature that was signed into law by Governor Hobbs called Jerry's Law. And Jerry's Law is named after a very sweet chocolate lab that was rescued from a horrific animal cruelty case. And because of that law, companion animals have much stronger protections in our state. And I would have been proud to work across the aisle with her on that.
Okay. Same question to you, Rick. Anyone from the opposite party you'd actually vote for?
The opposite party. None come to mind, very frankly.
Okay. Let's see. Cody, can you name a Democrat who you would vote for?
Well, Hank, I did serve some time in the legislature last session, and I worked well with some of the Democrats in there. There are some fine Democrats in the legislature. We didn't agree on everything all the time, but there was a few things that we did agree on, and we worked together. However, to those people that I did work with, I apologize in advance, but if I was in your district, I would work as hard as I possibly could to elect a fellow Republican in your district.
Just to round it out, who did you work with at the Capitol? What Democrats, even if you wouldn't vote for them, come to mind as I can work with them?
I worked well with Representative Alma Hernandez. She was very level-headed, easy to work with, has common sense. We worked well together on the Salt River Horse bill that I ran last session. Now, that's not saying I would vote for a Democrat. As I said, I would work as hard as I possibly could to help elect a Republican in that district if I lived outside of LD3.
Fair enough. George, anyone you would vote for, or even let's lower the bar to could work with?
I do like this question. I know that there's going to be issues that we agree on. Obviously, Julia mentioned the Humane Society and things around animal rights, and there's a handful of other issues. But candidly, the fundamental issues, there's not an alignment. The gulf between the two parties has never been wider, so there is no member currently of the state house or state senate or candidate running for statewide office who's a Democrat who I would be able to support. And similar to Cody's response, I would work vehemently, as I have my entire career, to ensure that someone that's aligned with my principles and the principles that I think the average Arizonan has gets elected. But I am confident that I will be able to, as I have done in my career, be able to work with folks just because they have a D next to the name and I have an R next to my name, being able to converse, treat everyone with the dignity and value that God made them in. That's an easy thing to do. But support and vote for them, I would be unable to do so.
Okay. All right, let's move on to some core questions here. These are the questions that voters in the district told us they care about most. And we've already hit on one of these, so let's just stick with water a little bit. I want to provide a little setup here. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, Scottsdale shut off the water for water hauling that kept Rio Verde foothills alive. And hundreds of households in this district had to find out the hard way that their homes were built with no assured water supply. Cody, why don't we start with you since you have lived this pretty intimately, but should Arizona start to require a proven 100-year water supply before any new subdivision breaks ground in the unincorporated parts of the district, even if that means fewer homes get built and the ones that do cost more?
That, to my knowledge, that currently is the law. Any homes, any subdivision where there is 6 or more homes, they're required to obtain an assured water supply and prove the supply that they're getting it from is going to be around for 100 years. What happened in Rio Verde foothills was a little different. We had builders come in that were building wildcat subdivisions. So they would build 4 or 5 at a time on one side of the street. And then they would move down a couple blocks and build 3 or 4 or 5. And they would come back to the other street that they had, just built 5 at the year or 2 prior, and they would build 5 more. And so they were skirting the law that's already in place. We don't need any more laws pertaining to that. If we all just followed the law, then we would be in a much better place right now. And Rio Verde foothills probably would not have entered the issue that we did in 2023.
Okay, George, same thing. How do we avoid future Rio Verde foothills?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Rio Verde, unfortunately for the residents in that part of our district, they put this issue on the map, as Cody mentioned, with wildcat subdivisions. Look, for anyone who's in an active management area, which a good chunk of the state is, but mostly it's in more of the urban, suburban environments, or the part that would be considered rural, but that would be close enough to Maricopa and Pima County and places like that. There's a lot of debate at the state capitol around AMAs, and should we have more? How do we manage? Obviously, rural Arizona, the reason why there is that wildcat subdivision carve out is because that's not feasible for certain parts of the state. But to Cody's point, we have those laws on the books. Those are things that I think should be followed closely. There's obviously quite a bit from a water perspective that we have to work on, namely for big parts of Legislative District 3, which is the Colorado River negotiations, which obviously the record of decision came out last week from the federal government. But I do think there's a lot more attention on those types of subdivisions being built. And I know that there's always discussion about changes to that law, but those changes have to be managed delicately because, again, there's a reason why there's a bit of a carve out. But obviously, the intent of the law is not that you create 5 homes at a time and essentially create a subdivision without creating a subdivision. We know that that's not the intent, and builders should know that as well. And now that there's a limelight on it, we need to work, all of us as leaders in our state and our community, to ensure we don't ever have that issue again.
Okay. Democrats, do you think the state legislature adequately solved this issue? And Julie, let's go to you.
Yeah, obviously there's a loophole that they're working around. We could put legislation in place to close that loophole. And in fact, I believe Cody has called for that in the past. But, I also will have to say I agree with George on this. We have much bigger issues with our water right now, especially with the Colorado River allotment being decreased, and the work that we need to do across the state to make sure that we have alternative sources of water for our future. So.
Okay. And Rick?
I think in theory it's been addressed. But as somebody said, it's a loophole around that. We can't have a strong economy without water, and our district needs a secure, sustainable water supply. And Arizona needs leaders who are willing to plan for the next generation, not just the next election. So water isn't partisan. It's fundamental to all our homes and businesses. communities and economic future. I think I have a short-term water plan, but I really think that we need to put together some real experts in this area, like SRP did in 1904 with individuals like Russo and Carl Hayden, and come up with the next 100-year plan so we can sustain growth and have a healthy economy.
Okay. Moving on to the next question, which is tangentially related. I want to talk a little bit about data centers. This is one of the most contentious land use fights in Arizona and the nation right now. And a large data center can use millions of gallons of water a day. So my question to you all is, first of all, where do you stand on data centers locating in Arizona broadly? And then two, more specifically, would you vote to require that new data centers bring their own water and their own power before they open? And George, why don't we kick this one to you first?
This is something that I get asked about significantly, especially when we're in the northwest part of the district. Look, in general, data centers, we have to have them. We want to have them in the United States of America. And in parts of Arizona, it's a national security interest. But I think District 3, a district that has immense water concerns, a district that is not have the same water considerations as maybe other parts of the valley, where people do see wells drying up and there is immense trepidation with it. I think we have to be wise about where data centers go. I think we need to be wise, and I fully supported the moratorium on the tax incentives for data centers that was just passed by the Republicans in the state House and Senate. And I am supportive, and I think there's been a lot of discussion that if a data center is going to come in, one, the newer ones are closed loop, meaning you feed them water once, then they don't have to take new water. And from an energy production perspective, I actually think there's a lot of will and a lot of momentum to ensure that if a data center wants to build itself and the community where it wants to be placed wants that data center, that they are able to bring their energy and their water. We don't have enough energy production in the state of Arizona. Everyone knows that. We don't even have enough energy production in the United States of America right now compared to some of our international our counterparts like China. And so it's definitely a more nuanced answer. There is a lot of work that has to be done here, but under no circumstances should we be placing data centers on every corner. And I think the data center industry and the providers, and I've heard from some of them, they have a lot of work to do to not just solve these problems that we have, but also solve the concern that people have. Look, you have to reach out. You have to have meetings in the community, and you need to hear from folks. And if they're frustrated, you need to be able to address why they are frustrated and why they are anxious and why they are pushing back.
Okay. Same question, Julie.
Yeah, so yes, I do support also the 3-year moratorium that was placed on tax credits for new data centers. I think that was the right call. Data centers are basically a dial. You can dial it one way to use a lot of energy and cool through energy, and you can roll the dial the other way and do a lot of cooling with water. I do think data centers are improving and becoming more efficient. And I do believe that we should make good deals for Arizona, right? So we need to evaluate the deals through the water and the energy lens. I think we can demand that they bring their own water source and that they pay for the energy, not only bring the energy that they need, but also pay for any enhancements to the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure and the grid. We need to make sure that they're paying their fair share. They're not paying wholesale rates while the residents nearby are paying retail rates. So I think we need to strike a better deal with them. We need to make sure that they pay their fair share. And then I think we can even go a step further and ask them to be true partners in the communities in which they're invited to build. Maybe investing in our parks, investing in our schools. They should become partners in the communities where they build.
Okay. Rick, what do you think about data centers and what kind of requirements for them to build, if any, should we put on them?
So I'm probably going to be the radical of the group here, apparently, but I think we should put a moratorium on data centers. And right now there are 98 data centers operating in the state of Arizona. The average data center uses 3 million gallons of water a day. I've heard the closed loop theory. I'm not sure I really buy into that. On average, they do provide short-term construction jobs, but once they're finished, On average, you get 35 employees out of it. And if, if I was a tech billionaire, I get it. Arizona is cheap land. There's no seismic activity. There's no tsunamis. There's no hurricanes. There's no tornadoes. It makes sense. But when you're dealing with an area that we're all living in that has such a limited resource of water, and with that comes the power to pump that water. I love AI and I love tech. There's a lot of other places they could go with a lot more water than Arizona. So I think we should immediately put a moratorium on further construction or further approval of data centers. There's also the noise factor, and when I go out and canvass, I found that most citizens are against data centers. They don't want it here for all the above reasons that I mentioned.
Okay. And Cody, your thoughts on data centers, Arizona's role, what we should be doing to ensure that they're good partners in the community?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have voted for that tax credit moratorium on the data centers when I was in the House last session. I do think that we can utilize the data centers as a bet to the state. And I say that what I mean is we can negotiate for water. We can negotiate for extra power. If we can open the door to allow the data centers to create their own electricity, generate their own electricity, on-site generation, and any excess can be sold back to APS or SRP, back into the grid, and allow the cost of electricity for the residents of Arizona to decrease, that would be a huge win. Also, the industry is always improving, and this is the beauty of the free market and capitalism. These data centers and the builders know, the designers know that there's a water issue in Arizona, so they are creating closed loop systems. I've seen, on paper how the systems work, and infographics, everything like that. They use propylene glycol coupled with refrigerant to help cool, the components in the data center. So they're essentially moving away from water. So the concern that data centers may utilize, excess water is being taken care of by the free market and the industry. Now, I'm not a proponent of putting data centers in the middle of neighborhoods. So don't take what I'm saying as I'm saying I would support that. I would not support that. They have their place. They should be set aside in industrial areas, not in neighborhoods, not near schools or parks. And there's processes within the county, within the state and cities for permitting for those reasons, for proper placement.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Let's move on to school vouchers. Arizona's Empowerment Scholarship Program now costs the state close to $1 billion a year. And the Auditor General has repeatedly documented spending that the state just can't account for. So I want to ask each of you, name one specific guardrail you would vote for: a spending restriction, an income cap, an audit requirement, any kind of academic outcome standards, anything. Or alternatively, tell voters straight up that the right number of new guardrails is 0 and why you think that. And Julie, let's start with you this time.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to start off by just saying I support ESAs for the purpose that they were originally created. I support school choice, and I believe that our public schools cannot meet the needs of every child. So I do support that. I think to the point that you brought up, Hank, it is a program that was initially estimated when we passed universal vouchers in 2022. The state budget office estimated it would cost $33 million that year. It came in at 600. We're now a few years in and we're over $1 billion. So something is clearly out of bounds on this program. And it definitely needs us to take a very close look. In any regular business situation, this would be a glaring red light. In terms of limitations I would support, I have heard the stories about expenses being reimbursed for Disneyland and Rolex watches and lingerie. Of course, if there's fraud, waste, and abuse in the program, we need to root that out and we need to shut it down.
Okay. Rick, to you next.
I think with ESAs, and absolutely agree with Julie on, I believe in what they were first utilized for is a very noble type of way to spend that money. I think the first thing that we should do with ESAs is really go after the corruption and the waste. I think there was 20,000 cases of corruption in the ESA system last year. We should be going after those individuals to reduce costs for ESAs and then take a hard look at putting on guardrails and oversight so those type of things don't happen and saves the state money. Overall, the hard reality is we have the most expensive ESA system in the entire country. $1 billion a year. It's beginning to close good public schools, and it's hurting the state budget. So let's start with corruption, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Cody, same question. New guardrails, if any, that you would support, or else why no new guardrails?
Yeah, so I stand 100% with the School Choice Coalition and the ESA families across Arizona. We have over 100,000 families utilizing ESAs, and they're happy with the education choices that they've made personally within their families for their children. This program allows families to make that choice. We had public schools that were failing prior to the ESA program, and this gave families an out, a way to get out and go to the proper education for their child that they saw fit. The ESA program has less than 1% of waste. There was some charges that had tried to go through the program that they caught. So they are auditing the program. They caught these charges, said that these don't apply to ESA. You can't get reimbursed for these payments. So that's on you. So that's a fact. That's what happened. Let's talk. We could talk about the waste and the fraud in the public school system. The average per pupil cost to the state for public education is around $15,000 per. So ESAs, you get about $7,000 per student. So still half of that remains within the public education system, within the state general fund for that. So it's not taking every dime from, that would have been spent on that child in the public education and allowing it to go with the families to the education system of their choice. It's taking about 50% of it. And that's their tax money. That's their hard-earned money that they have sent to the state. They get it back to be able to take their child to the proper education that they deserve. And so I fully support the ESA program and the School Choice Coalition and all of the families that utilize ESAs. And I hope that more join the ESA program and continue to bolster the program and grow its numbers.
Okay. And George, same question. Any new guardrails you'd support? And if not?
Thank you, Hank, for this question. K-12 education is going to be a big focus of mine. I desire to sit on the committee, and it is because of this issue. I have spent the better part of the last 10 years of my career advocating for empowerment scholarship accounts, and not just advocating for them here in the state of Arizona, but advocating for them around the country. I did also want to clarify for folks that are listening, the word voucher, and I'm not trying to accuse anyone of this on this call, but the word voucher is often used as a derogatory term for these programs, and I want to make clear the difference between a voucher and an ESA. A voucher, which some states have, are dollars that go directly to a school on behalf of that child, and it is only for private school education. States like Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, and others have a voucher program. We have an empowerment scholarship account program, meaning the dollars go to an account for the parents to use. As Cody mentioned, on average, it's about $7,300 for those kiddos with unique needs like autism, especially sort of high cases of that. They get upwards of $40,000, which obviously it costs more to educate those children. Yes, this program spends $1 billion of funding, but I know as a state we want to invest in our children and we want to invest in the future of our state. The ESA program has a lot of guardrails. The reason why we know that lingerie was attempted, that Rolexes were attempted, and other things is because those that were flagged, those parents' accounts were shut off. Those parents were asked to give back the money. And there were some instances where a parent made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake on lingerie and other stuff, but they made a mistake because technically a lunch pail, a lunchbox is not an allowable expense. There were some parents that attempted to use the ESA for lunchboxes. I don't know that someone would say that's a $30 mistake. It's unallowable though, and so the parent was asked to give it back, and then they could continue using the program. We have less than 2% of unallowable spending and 0.3% of egregious spending. There was something, and I did want to comment on this, that Rick mentioned about the 20,000 cases. Unfortunately, that reporting has been debunked multiple times. That's not what's actually happening. There was a fundamental misunderstanding of the data being made public by the Department of Education and others. We could have an entire debate about our state's Empowerment Scholarship Account program, but at the end of the day, I want to bring it back to this point. Our children deserve the best. Our children are not served in all one-size-fits-all environments. That's why Arizona is proud to have led the charge on open enrollment, proud to have led the charge on charter schools, leading the charge on empowerment scholarship accounts, on tax credits. And we're going to lead the charge on future things. And I'm going to be proud to stand up alongside Cody and my counterparts in the House and Senate and ensure that we pass those common sense bills. I believe parents should be responsible for their children's education. And one final point, we have public schools that are closing in Arizona, and that is unfortunate. And that's because enrollment's declining, because the population has declined, because there are less people going into kindergarten. There's been not a single study that has linked that to the Empowerment Scholarship Account, whether it's here in Arizona or other places. And so it's a talking point that's used, of course, but that's not actually what's happening on the ground. And I stand by those. Actually, now we're at 104,047 students that use our state's Empowerment Scholarship Account program.
Anyone want to rebut in here?
I'll rebut it. I mean, you say potato, I say potato. At the end of the day, the public school system, which George, for generations in this country, has educated students, and especially students that were disadvantaged and are in areas within our district that might not have that ability to take advantage of those funds. And so strengthening public education and paying teachers what they're worth and putting more money into the public school system is, I think, a worthy cause. I think, unfortunately, you still have to come back to ESAs. You know, I remember when Republicans were all about, saving money, not spending it. This is a drain on the budget. I don't know how we can sustain it.
Can I?
Yeah.
Look, it's unfortunate that Rick thinks that those 104,000 students are a drain on the budget. I don't believe that that's true. Look, I went to a public school. I graduated from Mesa Public School District. There are some school districts that have been doing it right and they're growing, and other school districts are doing it wrong and they're not growing. And there's a reason for that. That does not mean that we shut down the options that parents have and then force kids back into these systems that were not serving them. Because if they were being served, by all means, they should continue to go to those schools. And where they're not being served, then they should be able to choose the other option. To me, it's way more fundamental than potato and potato. Again, with all due respect, I think there's a very clear difference. Look, Republicans, we've been leading the charge on increasing teacher pay, whether that started with the 20 by 2020 and everything else, and investing in public education. But look, investing in public education does not mean investing in out-of-state special interests. It does not mean investing in teachers' unions. We know that in many school districts around the state, I know, Hank, I'm slightly off of on ESAs, but on K-12 education, they're not spending anywhere near 50% of their budget in a classroom. That is egregious to me. And we've seen the reports that have come out that talked about the misspending and the spending on superintendent, or this magnificent, huge football facility that was being built out in the West Valley, or these school districts that had to be bailed out. Look, I think our kids are worth investing in. And one of the ways that we invested them is to ensure that parents have an ability to send their children where they best see fit, and most importantly, where their children are best served, not in the place that we force them to be only because that is their only option. And I will end on this. That's why I also believe, to your point, Rick, of, okay, well, the ESA is at $7,300. How do you get to a school maybe that's at $10,000? I do support being able to stack our tax credit with our Empowerment Scholarship Account. We also have the federal tax credit. I would urge Arizona to opt in to the federal scholarship tax credit. Those dollars could be able to use aside. Look, my heart is for any student, regardless of background, to be able to attend the school that they best see fit. And I'm confident we can get there through these school choice programs.
And just for the record, I'm not against parents' choice of where they should educate their children.
And I
Yeah,
think
and I would like to also just add, I'm sorry, but I would like to also add that over 70% of the students in this state are educated in our public schools. And George just said that he's such a proponent of the public schools, but in the same breath, he sounds very anxious to shut them down. And I have to say, if he says that Republicans in the legislature currently are leading the charge on public education and supporting it, I don't see where that is true. I don't understand why Prop 123 was not put on the ballot for this election. That's how we fund our schools, is out of our state land trust. And so I'm just a little confused by George's answer there. And I will also say, I support school choice. I am a parent who has used charter schools and public schools to educate my children. I support ESAs for the purpose they are intended. But I'm just concerned because I'm not sure that George is truly supportive of public schools, because I didn't hear anything in what he said that sounded like that was the case.
George, since
Yes.
that was directed at you, a very quick final.
Republicans, to be clear, have led the charge on ensuring that our teachers are invested in. And then many school districts and teachers unions decided that was not the way that they wanted to invest in our teachers. Proposition 123 wasn't needed, as the Republican majorities very clearly know. It's being paid out of our general election fund. I do not support it being put back. We have been able to fund at the levels that we have been. Look, my support of public schools, my support of charter schools, my support of homeschooling and private schools is not about those systems. My support is for the parents. And you are right, there's a lot of parents that utilize the public schools and public education as their method of educating their students, and they will continue to do so. And we will continue to lead on ensuring that parents are the ones that are in charge, that their children are supported, regardless of the system that they're in.
Absolutely. Parents are in charge, and there's value in all of those different school choices. And the endowment of the State Land Trust was created to fund our schools.
Okay. You're right, George, that we could have an entire debate on just ESAs and especially public education, but we are running short on time, so I want to keep this moving. And in that case, let's move on to the explain your vote portion of this debate, because this ties in very nicely with what we were just talking about. I want to know how each of you would vote and a little bit about your thinking when it comes to Proposition 320. And that's the one that would require large school districts to spend at least 60% of their operating budget on direct classroom instruction. We're talking teachers, material, instruction, or else they'd face a penalty and lose state funding. Take a minute each and tell me how you plan to vote on this and kind of your thought process on it. And Cody, why don't you kick this off first?
Yeah, well, I was happy to vote on this when it was up for vote in the House as a ballot referral from the legislature. So I've already voted for it once in one way, and I plan to vote for it again when it's on my ballot in November. This is necessary because many school districts in Arizona are not spending the majority of their funds on the classroom where it belongs, where it needs to be spent, on teachers' pay, on classroom supplies, books, literature. Teachers. I can speak about Cave Creek School District. That's the school district that I live in. The average teacher makes about $35,000 to $40,000 a year, and if they have a doctorate, they may make $55,000 a year. That's not a livable wage right now, especially for a teacher in Arizona. Many teachers having to get part-time jobs through the summer, to pay their bills. Teachers get into teaching because they love to teach. They love to instruct kids, and we should pay them accordingly. This ballot referral will do that. It'll direct more funds, 60%, to the classroom where the instruction happens and where kids are learning. Too much is eaten up by the facilities, the maintenance on the buildings. Sometimes there's AC units replaced when they could have been repaired rather than replaced. And contractors get large sums of money to do that. So this would cause the districts to have to spend the first 60% of the state funding in the classroom where the education is taking place.
Okay.
Rick? I'd vote yes.
Thank you. Rick, what do you think? Do you agree with
Well, I can't disagree with Cody on one thing that he said, which is, the average teachers in Arizona are paid $47,000 and the national average is $77,000. However, with that said, of course, I want as much funding for education as possible, reaching the classrooms. However, with that said, but making arbitrary mandates can sound better than they actually work, because what about, and I think Cody mentioned this, transportation. We want safe school buses. We've all seen on the news what happens when a school bus crashes. We need counselors. We need school safety. We need special education services. And we need to keep operating, keeping schools operating too. So I want accountability without tying educators' hands.
Okay,
Hey, can I?
quickly.
So apparently some school districts need $85 million domed football fields too. So, I think that was Tolleson or Avondale, somewhere over there, that a school district was planning to build an $85 million domed football field. That is not money to the classrooms. That is not educating students. That's a domed football field for a school district.
And I agree with you on that. That's why there needs to be accountability, whether it's ESA or public school funding.
And this ballot referral will do that.
Again, I think, average mandates don't always work out like you hope.
Okay, George, how are you going to vote on this one?
I'll be a yes vote, and let me explain why. It's actually unfortunate that the legislature had to step in this way. It shouldn't be our job to be telling school districts how to spend their money. But the problem is they're not spending it wisely. The vast majority of school districts, and there are some that are set aside, do not spend 60% of funding on instructional. We're saying the classroom for sport on instructional items. There are some school districts that are close to 40%. That should shock and horrify and anger voters across the state of Arizona. And so the legislature had to step in, had to refer this as a measure of accountability on a system that is not accountable. Again, we just spent about 20 minutes talking about the Empowerment Scholarship Account, a system that has significant accountability, which is why we could talk about it for 20 minutes and debate about this spending or that spending and should trips to here be allowed or not. But folks, we had to step in. We had to refer this. This, of course, applies to larger school districts that have the ability to be able to maneuver their money, and yet they have chosen not only to not give it to teachers, but to remove it from instructional aid. And the thing that also frustrates me more is, setting aside some of these examples of dome football fields and others, they're spending on administration. Which to me doesn't make sense. And we have quite a bit of leaders at the school board level, two of which, Amy Carney and Karen Warner and SUSD, who have been fighting against the school closures, frankly, against their opponents who ran on not closing schools. But we have things like this hanging over us where money's not making it to the classroom. So I would be a yes vote for that reason, but this is not an issue that we should be having, because school districts should be spending their money on instruction, not on administration and bloat.
Okay, and Julie, how do you plan to vote and why?
Yeah, I plan to vote no. I will start off by saying I do support paying our teachers more, 100%. I also am a very big fan of accountability, but this is exactly what Rick said, an arbitrary number. And it's not fair, and it's actually disingenuous to use that, right? So let me just give an example. Our teachers, we have a 14% turnover rate annually for our teachers, primarily because we are not funding our schools properly and we are not paying our teachers enough to stay in the job. So I'll tell you what happens when you have a 14% turnover. You spend a lot of time and money recruiting and training people. Guess what doesn't show up in your classroom expense bucket? Training and recruiting people. So if we really are serious about helping our schools and funding our schools and paying our teachers, then we don't put an arbitrary 60% number out there and then take away funds to punish them if they don't meet them. We do the right thing and we fund the schools properly through the State Land Trust. We pay them the right way and we don't play games with arbitrary numbers.
Okay. I want to squeeze in one rapid fire question here because we've got two questions from the audience and they're on the exact same topic. So voters want to know what you think when it comes to the 2020 election and beyond. So here's one version of the question. Are Arizona elections free and fair? And was Katie Hobbs the rightful winner of the last gubernatorial election? Let's start with you, George.
Definitely, this question would have been worthy of the non-rapid fire. I think the framing is unfortunately politicized. I think there's a lot of work that's been done by Republicans in the House and Senate to get our elections in a position where voter trust is back. We're not where we need to be, but I'm confident things like Proposition 144 will get us closer to that.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask again. Was the 2020 election fair and square?
My answer is what it was. I'm about actually talking about results. I'm not going to answer a politicized question that was left to a 15-second rapid fire section.
Okay. Cody?
Yeah. So, we've had a lot of unlawful, voters on the voter rolls that are not lawfully present on the voter rolls. They've been removed. I'm looking forward to the next election. I'm not looking back. It is a fundamental role of the government to ensure that our elections are secure. And, there has been members in the legislature that have been doing that. Proposition 144 is a product of Representative Alexander Colladin. And I've looked forward to voting yes on that. And I guess 15 seconds is probably up, but that's my answer.
I didn't get a yes or no, though. We're looking for a yes or no on this.
That's my answer. I'm looking forward at the next elections and how we can make them more secure.
Okay. Julie, can you give me a yes or no?
Yes.
And Rick?
And yes.
Yes, the 2020 election was free and fair. Hobbs won. Again, there was 22 documented cases of potential fraud out of 3.4 million votes. So I think that I don't ask me, Hank, to do the math in my head, but I think that's a pretty good percentage that proves that point.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the time we've got here. Let's move on to our closing statements. And why don't each of you take about 90 seconds to make your closing case to voters? And Cody, take this away.
Yeah, to the people of LD3, again, thank you to the Republicans for nominating me to be your next state representative. We have some serious issues coming our way this next year and part of this year with water, with power, with our schools and education choices of parents. We need to secure all of those. We need to secure the safety on our streets, make sure that when you go out to dinner at night with your family, you can rest assured that you are in a safe place and that you're not going to get mugged and that the crime is going down. Arizona has experienced a rise in crime while the rest of the nation, much of the rest of the nation is experiencing a decrease in crime. And so for all of these reasons, this is why I'm running to represent you. And I look forward to the election and I hope to have earned your vote.
Thank you very much, Cody. George, you're up next.
As I mentioned, my name is George Califf. I'm proud to be the Republican nominee, one of the two Republican nominees for State House. Look, we've had a great debate. We spent a lot of time talking about difficult issues. We went back and forth on something like empowerment scholarship accounts and the future of our state and our children. And that's what I think healthy debate should be at a time when trust in our institutions is at an all-time low. That includes the institution of government, that includes elective bodies in the federal and state level, that includes our elections. Those are things we should take seriously. Those are things that we should debate. Those are things that we should be able to discuss and be willing to discuss. And that's why I am running, to be able to earn your vote, to be able to lead this state by example. Common sense has been used quite a bit in tonight's debate. Common sense is where the vast majority of Arizonans are. Common sense is no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes, a more affordable Arizona, allowing us to buy gas, not just from California, but from Texas, all things that our current governor, Katie Hobbs, vetoed. That's supporting law enforcement. I'm proud to be supported by 6 law enforcement organizations in the state of Arizona. That means that we should be rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse in government. The hundreds of millions that we've been seeing in our state Medicaid program. That also means that we should be empowering parents to educate their children, to provide health care to them in the way that they best see fit, that we're protecting those that are the most innocent among us. That means making sure that Biological men don't play in women's sports, something that 65% of Arizonans support and believe in. Those are common sense principles. I look forward to leading in that way in the state house, and I look forward to earning your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you very much, George. Rick, your final case for voters.
Thank you. I'm asking you to vote for me because I'm a citizen of our district like you and not a career political operative like George, although I like him. Like you, I'm concerned about affordability, water, education, overdevelopment, and our quality of life in the district. My motto is common sense and moderation. If you're tired of performative politics and want to elect someone who will build bridges, find consensus based on people-centered politics, then you should vote for me. I want to be part of the solution to our issues that face our district and state. To be the moderate voice, voting for the greater good of all of our citizens. Let's bring back a bipartisan working government. I understand how special, as everyone else on here does, of how special our district is, and I want to solve our looming problems. I hope I've earned your vote tonight in November, whether you are a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican who's just grown uncomfortable with MAGA and Christian nationalism. If you want to learn more about me, go to my website, electsfargo.com. I will represent all of you because we are all Americans. Remember, you can vote for Rick Spargo. Thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you for being here, Rick. And Julie, take us home.
Thank you. So this campaign has reminded me that politics at its very best is not actually about politics. It's about people. It's about the families who call this community home, the schools our children attend, the water that we all rely upon, and the future that we should be building together. And that's why I believe we can disagree without being divided, why we can have different perspectives and still come together to solve problems. That's how I've approached every challenge in my career. I listen to understand, I find common ground, roll up my sleeves, and I get the job done. I'm not running to be a career politician. I'm running because I love this community. I believe Arizona can do better. We are facing some big and complex problems. And from my years as a business leader and a CEO, I know what it takes to lead through complexity. I will bring an independent, pragmatic voice to the state legislature, one that puts people ahead of politics and results ahead of rhetoric. I'm Julie Gable. I'm a problem solver. I'm your neighbor, and I'm ready to get to work for you. I'd be honored to earn your vote.
Okay, thank you, Julie. That concludes the House portion of tonight's Legislative District 3 debate. Thank you so much to all of our candidates for taking the time to be here tonight to speak directly to voters. And thank you to our voters for watching and informing yourselves ahead of the November 3rd election. For official voter information, please visit azcleanelections.gov, and we'll be right back with the Senate candidates for the second portion of this debate.